I'm super happy to be here among such awesome speakers, and I find also like plenty of consistency in the thinking, and I'm here to probably take you a bit deeper into the customer experience side, which, as we saw earlier, is so central to this transformation. Um, I'm really talking about independent traveler trends today, but I want to talk about human behavior first. And it seems to be that, at least I have been trying to study human behavior and relationship between human behavior and digital for the last 3 or 4 years now. And it seems to be that behavior is becoming extremely important to think about. So I want to first, kind of get on the same page as to what we mean by behavior. And behavior purely in the digital realm means action on a digital interface or device or within a digital environment. It is something that a customer or user does. It's all those things that people do in their lives, but supported by a digital technology. So I'll give you two quick examples. I'm going to be a bit fast here. I only have 10 minutes, so please bear with me. I'll give you two quick examples of how behavior changes with digital. Before we had Instagram, you used to shoot and develop and display, and we had a completely different cycle of behavior. And after we are shooting and editing and sharing, it's become much more about conversation. Similarly, when we used to hail cabs before we had digital technology, we would call a cab and then take the ride and pay. Now we do something like mapping, and we browse cabs, we look at drivers, and we pick drivers, we pay, we ride, and then we rate the driver and probably have a conversation about the ride. So the disruption is happening in terms of the digital habits that these new successful services are creating. And there is more and more the increasing thinking within digital innovation circles that it's about creating habits around digital technology in order to make technology successful. Again, what is digital doing in terms of moments? And again, consistency here with what Nick said. We used to talk about journeys, and journeys are super important. But it's becoming more and more about being relevant in the moment. You had initially, before the days of digital, you had life, and then you had travel. Travel used to be something you did as a kind of reward, as something, a specific separate behavior from living and working and raising your kids and so on. There was a specific time and place for that. Now more and more with digitally equipped markets and customers, we are seeing that life moments and travel moments are merging. They're becoming seamless, they're becoming more and more indistinguishable from each other. People travel more, they travel more often, they take different kinds of shorter vacations, they're more spontaneous in what they do. For example, this snapshot from Google shows that a so-called persona, a customer called Amy, had 419 digital moments researching her trip over 2 months. So a research experience took 419 specific kind of smaller micro moments or experiences, including videos, searches, and page visits, which led to a decision to actually travel. This is also from Google, and I like their thinking, and they're one of the, because of course they specialize in, selling ads to businesses. They're very good at trying to understand what's happening at the micro moment level. And they're looking at least they've identified 4 kinds of moments. I wouldn't always say that this works for all kinds of travelers, but it gives a very good picture. For example, customers typically seem to have I want to get away moments. There are time to make a plan moments. There are moments when they want to book, and then there is the experience moments. And the coolest thing I think is happening is that these moments are not always happening in a linear fashion as they used to be. Sometimes people book it, and then they actually plan what they're going to do with their trip after. Sometimes they go on a trip, and then they start to have the experience moments. They don't really have very much of an idea about what they're going to do in the experience moments. And there are also moments when people are just working really hard. I know so many friends who are taking spontaneous holidays all of a sudden, and they say, I want to get away. So it's a mindset shift in thinking about specific pockets of value where you can be relevant for your customer and embed yourself into human behavior. So I'm going to talk about 5 trends really fast, uh, which we will use further in the workshop today. So this is kind of like a precursor. We can take these trends and run with them in the workshop. The first one is that retention, engagement is cool, but retention on digital is driven by human behavior. If you can engage people and create habits, you have retention over a period of time. It's not just engagement one time. The second is that you need to think about physical touch points. Digital is great, but physical has a certain power because objects have a staying power. They have a presence in our lives and our environments. This is a backpack which is totally connected. It's like, physical objects are getting more and more connected. For example, so if this backpack was something I was carrying, the backpack already owns a relationship with me at that point in time. So if it was GPS connected and it was kind of like hooked up to like maybe the service of a hotel or a resort or a service provider, then through the backpack I could probably be intercepted. And that becomes a point of customer contact and probably a point of sale. So do not ignore partnerships with physical service providers. This is also a physical touch point. It's something developed by Toyota. It's a small little robot that sits on the dashboard of a car, and it kind of becomes like a life partner, voice assistant, and so on. It's a very cute little thing. As you can see, it evokes emotion. It's physical. It's not flat, and there's something more visceral about it, and you can relate to it. And through that emotional connection, those users who have those moments of need and when they have those moments of spontaneous expression, they might connect with something like this and do something which turns into value. So it's about monetizing the behavior. The third is the third trend is conversational interfaces. Again, Nick mentioned this, and I thought there was so much consistency in what we said. Was that the conversations are obviously definitely going to become the next user interface. Typing, I just can't wait to get rid of my keyboard. Typing, just like these things where you point and click, remotes. Why do you need any of that when you can speak, when you have voice? The only thing that prevents us from having conversations with robots or with interfaces or digital technology in public is privacy. It feels weird to talk to something, you'll be overheard. But that barrier is soon going to fall. And please think about conversational interfaces, which means natural language, which means having a kind of a dialogue with a human being and then becoming relevant in that dialogue. The fourth trend, Pekka mentioned mixed reality, and I think I would include that here, mixed and virtual. But what happens when you can travel without leaving? It's going to change the travel industry. It's going to influence travel. Your customer might want to take half their vacation at home. They might want to see the Aurora Borealis at home, but come to Lapland for the husky ride. They're going to think of the value of the experience differently when they have the option to experience some of that in a virtual space or in a mixed reality space. So again, immersive hardware is something that I would say the biggest companies here must be investing into. I always advise my tourism and travel clients to please have investments into VR so you can at least demo it with your customers. And the scene there is an interesting VR company by a friend of mine. Look it up. And the last one is really millennials and silver surfers. You have essentially two demographics at both extremes of the age spectrum. And the really old demographic, 65 plus, are super interesting, super important. They have new behaviors, they have a lot of money, and that's going to grow as a valuable segment. But so are the millennials who are young, and they are also very complex. They're contradictory. They can spend a lot of money on expensive luxury goods, but then they can also be really cheap, and they want to go for low prices and discounts. These are two extreme segments that you have to look at, and they both behave very differently, so I would consider looking at them and designing for them. And with that, I would say the last thing is there are two, the contradiction of designing for independent travelers is going to be that they want to be secure, but they also want to be surprised. And that's the tricky part. How do you keep them secure? How do you make the whole experience predictable, but also throw in enough surprise and enough spontaneity in there that hooks them and makes them, enjoy themselves and spend their money. Thank you so much for your attention.
Please stay here.